What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my top 60 running backs for the 2025 fantasy football season. We're only a few days away before I officially jump into my week one content. So my last few videos just kind of wanted to run through all my rankings, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, and then my overall player rankings. Today, we are focusing on the running back position, and this video isn't going to be super in-depth on every single player. This is more of like a quick hitter overview. I'm sure you guys are like last minute cramming for your fantasy drafts. Just gonna like briefly talk about each player, go through the different tiers. If you enjoy the video, smash the like button, subscribe so you guys can see more. But let's dive right into tier one here. I have three running backs in tier one. It is Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Saquon Barkley. Just recently bumped Jahmyr Gibbs up to my RB1 spot. Previously, it had been Bijan Robinson, but with his right tackle, Caleb McGarry, now set to miss significant time, I did end up giving Jahmyr Gibbs that bump. Saquon, have him as the RB3. If he's your RB1, I get it. I do just think there's some durability concerns coming off just a season where he handled a lot of volume. And I also just don't think his ceiling is significantly higher than Gibbs or Bijan. So I think they have less risk and, relatively similar ceilings. Now, looking at tier two, I have Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Genty, Devon Achane, and Derrick Henry. Obviously, for CMC, it's always been a health issue. I guess the new notable thing is that they've added Brian Robinson Jr. I literally have not moved Christian McCaffrey in my rankings with the, B-Rob addition. They gave up a sixth-round pick. They've, had an injury issue with Isaac Guerrero. The RB room has been banged up. Like, this is not something that I really think is going to hinder CMC. He's still going to be the clear-cut RB1. And I think you could even make the case that, maybe B-Rob coming in, taking a little bit of the work on, the early downs between the 20s is actually beneficial for Christian McCaffrey. The big thing with CMC is just, can he stay healthy? If he plays 15-plus games, he is going to be a huge hit for fantasy. If he gets hurt, obviously he's going to flop. So I still have him here as my RB4. The ceiling is very high, but obviously there is increased risk. For Ashton Genty, feel really good about him as a 1-2 turn pick. Super talented player, 3-down skill set. Not the greatest offensive situation, the O-line's questionable, but you have solid quarterback play, solid weapons around him. I think he's going to be very productive as a rookie. Still in on Devon Achane, even though he's dealing with the calf injury. Expect him to be good to go week one. Even if he's not, it seems like they're playing it really safe. I think he has the most upside of any running back going in the second round. This is a guy where if you only took his full games in 2023, he would have been 20-plus points per game. Last year, if you look at the games where Tua was healthy, would have been the RB1 in points per game. So you obviously can't guarantee health. Tua has his own injury issues. Devon Achane, smaller, undersized running back, probably a little bit more prone to injury, but the ceiling is clearly there, and there's obviously a peak outcome where everyone stays healthy, and Devon Achane is the RB1 at 22, 23 points per game. And then the last guy in this tier is Derrick Henry. I'm sure some people are going to think this is low. He's coming off a very solid season. As long as he doesn't have a big fall off or, get hurt, I think he's going to have another very productive season. It's just the lack of peak upside where he's never going to be super involved as a pass catcher. So even last year where he's super efficient, hitting in the touchdown department, racking up a ton of volume on the ground, he was still only the RB4. Obviously, the age, the overall wear and tear, I just think there's some risk, and I just don't feel like he has that crazy high ceiling where I, feel the need to put him any higher. I do think Achane, Genty, CMC all have much higher ceilings than Derrick Henry. And then moving into my tier 3 running backs, this is my mid to late round 2 guys. I have Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Jonathan Taylor, and Josh Jacobs. Big fan of Bucky Irving, just a super strong situation, good offensive line, good offense, going to be a high-scoring unit. He's a super productive player. He's a very talented running back. Did working on the goal line last year, super involved as a pass catcher, just a great runner, just all around really solid running back pick. I like him leading this tier. Chase Brown, definitely more of a volume and situation bet where he was the workhorse down the stretch last year for the Bengals. This is going to be a high-scoring offense. He's going to get involved as a pass catcher. You're just hoping he can really hold off the, Samaje Perines and Taj Brookses of the world. Then I have Jonathan Taylor. I think we know he is a great real-life running back. He's going to give you really solid production on the ground. I think his upside is just a little bit capped. He's never been super involved as a pass catcher. And then I'm not quite sure what the touchdown upside is looking like with this current, Colts offense, but still a very solid option in round 2. And then wrapping it up here with Josh Jacobs. I was a little bit skeptical about Josh Jacobs heading into last year. I was also probably a little bit lower on him than consensus heading into this season. But with the inability of Marshawn Lloyd to stay healthy, I think we're probably just going to see a very similar season from Josh Jacobs like we saw last year. Not going to be a super high ceiling player, but very fine in like the 2-3 turn area. Now, looking at my tier 4 running backs, this is like mid round 3 to 3-4 turn area. Going to go Amarion Hampton, James Cook, Kyron Williams, Kenneth Walker, and Travion Henderson. Very in on Amarion Hampton. Obviously, the Slater injury sucks, but this is still a fine offensive line. Najee Harris has been very limited with that eye thing. I think this is going to be a good offense. You have Justin Herbert at the quarterback position. Hampton, round 1 pick, 3-down skill set, can catch passes, can be that physical goal line back. I think it's fair that he's in like this fringe RB1 territory. Then I have James Cook, not necessarily the highest ceiling, but he's going to be the RB1 on, one of the best offenses in the NFL. He got the extension this offseason, so there's no like weird holdout concerns anymore. Obviously, he hit in the touchdown department last year, but he's going to be ultra efficient, and I still think he's going to be a high touchdown scorer, just given his RB1 status in this Bills offense. Then I have Kyron Williams, maybe a little bit lower than consensus when it comes to Kyron. He did get the extension, which prompted me to move him up. I still don't think he's going to see the same usage he saw last year. I just don't think from like a logical perspective that he was productive enough to warrant giving him, 75% opportunity share. I think we're going to see Jarquez Hunter, Blake Corum a little bit more involved, but still an RB1 with like 65% opportunity share for the Rams is still very solid usage and warrants a round 3 pick. Then I have Kenneth Walker. I think some people might be fading off of him. Early in the offseason, it was like, oh my gosh, this is great for Kenneth Walker, new offensive coordinator. He fits in great with him. And then recently, with him being banged up throughout training camp, it's like, man, Charbonnet, making a ton of noise. I still have confidence in Kenneth Walker. I think he's a very good player, really showed an increased receiving ceiling last year. And I think, if this offensive line can hold up, I do think this run game is going to be much improved. I think this could definitely be the year where Kenneth Walker establishes himself as like a locked-in RB1 option. And then the last guy in this tier, someone who I've just continued to move up, Travion Henderson. I've been a believer in the player, loved him as a prospect, has that big play upside, great receiving back, great in pass pro, so he's actually going to get out there for those receiving opportunities. I like, the upside of this Patriots offense as a young ascending unit. He's not someone who needs to take 70+% of the opportunities. That's not his game. He's more of like that Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane archetype, like an Alvin Kamara type. I think sometimes people get a little too caught up about the competition, right? Like some people are completely out on Henderson because you have Ramondre Stevenson there. If you're in the right situation, if you have the right talent for it, you don't need to take 65-70% of the opportunities. Just look at Jahmyr Gibbs. This was a guy who was like splitting 50-50 with David Montgomery, and now he is like a locked-in early to mid-round 1 pick. It's all about the situation, all about the talent. One guy in a specific offense getting 75% of the opportunities isn't guaranteed to outproduce a very talented running back with the right usage, taking 55-60% of the opportunities. I really like Travion Henderson here as a rookie pick. And then looking at tier 5, we're going to start off with Breece Hall. I have just steadily moved Breece Hall down my rankings. A little bit sad, big fan of him, really like him as a player, but I do think we're going to see Braylon Allen, even Isaiah Davis kind of involved in this offense, and the overall offensive ceiling is just not super high. So I think you can talk yourself into him getting involved as a pass catcher. Outside of Garrett Wilson, the weapons are just terrible. And then I think you can also talk yourself into the efficiency, with Justin Fields, the threat of his legs. Breece Hall could log a very efficient rushing season. But if you have Braylon Allen taking work on the early downs, potentially near the goal line, and then you have Isaiah Davis working in on third downs, 2-minute drill stuff, that just really caps both the floor and ceiling for a guy like Breece Hall. Then I have RJ Harvey, super in on Harvey this season. Obviously a great landing spot with the Broncos. They paid up to draft him in round 2, really reached to take him here. They're clearly a believer in him. He is a big play threat, great pass catcher. I think he's one of the better values at the running back position, especially in like the early to mid rounds. He was one of the guys I talked about in my league-winning running back video. Then we have James Conner. I mean, just a very steady option, someone who feels like his floor is like RB2 production. I know there's been some like Trey Benson buzz, and he might get more involved than he was last year, but this is not a situation where you have like a washed up veteran who just seems like primed to be replaced. James Conner had a great season. He's been super consistent, always in like that 15 point per game range. So I think he's a very strong pick as like a mid-tier RB2 option. Then I have Chuba Hubbard, and I can certainly see the upside for Chuba. He truly did operate as the workhorse last year, commanded a ton of volume. This back-to-back seasons where Dave Canales has, given workhorse usage. Last year it was Chuba. The previous year with the Bucks, it was Rachaad White. But it's always tough, like fully backing like these super volume-dependent running backs because all it takes is one guy to kind of emerge, eat into that usage, and the value's kind of gone, right? So you have Rico Dowdle, you have Trevor Etienne. Are we going to see Chuba hold on to the receiving usage? I think that's a big question mark. And you also just look at the offensive situation. If you go from the workhorse to like, a 60-40 split on the Panthers, that's just not a super appealing role. And so I try to avoid these guys that are just like super pushed up due to volume. I still think he's a fine pick. He's my RB20, but not quite as high on him as consensus. RB21, I have Alvin Kamara. This is kind of a similar argument. Aging running back, really poor offense, has really been pushed up by kind of like PPR, gimmicky receiving usage. He's also just really tanked towards the end of the season where he's been someone where he can kind of get you out to a front runner position. He'll be super productive early on in the season, but when you need him for that playoff push into the playoffs, he's really kind of fallen apart and, not been super playable. So Alvin Kamara, back end RB2, I think is fine. Now looking at tier 6, this is definitely a tier that I've kind of, juggled with, moved guys up and down throughout the offseason. At this point, this is how I have these guys ranked. I have Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and then Isaiah Pacheco. For Tony Pollard, first off, just from like a betting perspective, he projects a lot better than the rest of these guys. I think the Tajay Spears high ankle sprain is really going to let him hit the ground running with a workhorse role. I think this offense also has the upside to overachieve with a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. Then I have Aaron Jones, and I feel like some people are just writing off Aaron Jones. He was still very productive last season. I know they brought in Jordan Mason, but like in his entire NFL career, he's got like a 5-6 game sample size of him being super productive. I still think Mason's an interesting pick, but like I'm not someone who's buying into Mason just straight up overtaking Aaron Jones. I still think he's a really good player on an offense that I believe in, like him as a back-end RB2. Then I have David Montgomery, and he's kind of a tough player to rank because just like from a baseline expectation perspective, he should probably be ranked below Swift, below Pacheco, because if Jahmyr Gibbs stays healthy, there's just not a lot of upside there with David Montgomery. But he's the one player in this tier where he also has like that conditional handcuff value, where if Jahmyr Gibbs goes down, all of a sudden David Montgomery is like a locked-in top 10 running back week to week, potentially even better than that as like a top 5 running back. Whereas like if Roshan Johnson or Kyle Monungai goes down for DeAndre Swift, that's not going to change a lot. If Jordan Mason goes down, like Aaron Jones might be better, but he's still probably not going to be the workhorse. Similar thing with Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. So he does have that extra upside, but if Jahmyr Gibbs stays healthy, maybe not quite as exciting as some of these other dudes. Then I have DeAndre Swift, and I do think he has the ability to overachieve this season. This is a wide open running back room. This is an offense that I think could be kind of volatile, but does have a very, very high ceiling. And it's like, who's taking his opportunities? Is it Roshan Johnson? Is it Kyle Monungai? Maybe Ben Johnson is pretty cool with him, even though, he was moved off of the Lions. And I think a lot of people thought there'd be legit competition. But I still think there's some risk of the Bears making a trade. Maybe Kyle Monungai is really eating into his usage as like that early down grinder, kind of vulturing near the goal line. So I think Swift is like a fringe RB2 is a fair spot. And then the last guy here is Isaiah Pacheco. I can certainly see the upside for Pacheco where he just emerges as the clear-cut running back one. But I also think this is a team that could use a lot of different guys, whether that's Kareem Hunt mixing in. You have Brashard Smith, who I do think is going to be involved as a pass catcher. We saw him pretty involved in that Bears preseason game where he had a nice reception, had another play where he got open, dropped it. But like they have him on the field running with the ones. And so, yeah, the upside's there, but you can also see like the downside of a potential committee situation, but still someone who could peak in the touchdown department on this Chiefs offense. Now, moving into tier 7, these are like more of our established RB3s. I have the Steelers running backs back to back with Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren. Now, just in terms of like how I view these players, I'm probably a little bit higher on Jalen Warren than consensus, and then probably a little bit lower on Caleb Johnson. The reports out of Steelers camp haven't been like overly impressive with Caleb Johnson, where there's some concern about him in pass protection. Aaron Rodgers actually trusting him out there to kind of do the right thing. Jalen Warren's a professional. He's a super well-rounded player. Even though he's undersized, he is capable in pass protection. He's a very good receiving back. And so I do think Jalen Warren is going to be very involved early on. But I also don't think that the Steelers are like fully locked in with him. If they were, he would have played more last year. They probably wouldn't have taken Caleb Johnson in round 3. And so Warren's probably the better option early on. But I imagine at some point Caleb Johnson kind of takes over and is the better option in the second half of the season. Then I have Tyrone Tracy in a potential committee situation with Cam Scatabo, but as of right now, it does look like he's the leader. I still like Scatabo, but if Tyrone Tracy is going to start off as the running back 1, there's obviously some value there. Then I have Zach Charbonnet. This might seem pretty expensive for a handcuff, but we do have a situation where Kenneth Walker hasn't exactly been the healthiest running back. When Zach Charbonnet has filled in, he's just been like a lock to give you running back 1 production. But then there have also been the reports that this might be, a little bit more of a committee, a closer split between these two. And so I think this is a fair spot to draft him. He obviously, baseline projection wise, might not compare to like a Tyrone Tracy or a Travis Etienne, but there is some upside in there, and I am just trying to buy into this Seahawks rushing attack. Then I have Travis Etienne. At this point, does look like the favorite to be, the most valuable Jaguars running back. Now, do I think he holds on to that role for the entire season? That's a little bit questionable, but still interesting early on. Plus, he could be a potential trade target, and there are some interesting landing spots. The Cowboys, probably most notably, I think the Bears could be in contention, but they'd probably be more in the mix for like a Tank Bigsby-esque running back, so maybe not applicable here for Travis Etienne. Then I have J.K. Dobbins. Might be the RB1 to start off the season here with the Broncos. I do think there's going to be a split, but I do think this is a backfield that could support 2 fantasy-relevant running backs. Dobbins is the adult in the room, was pretty productive last year, and, solid option here when you're getting into like close to the triple-digit picks. And then the final guy in this tier, obviously a massive riser. I have Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt or Bill Crosky-Merritt. Looks like he's going to be the running back 1 here for the Commanders. Very unique situation where like sometimes you have these late round picks, these day 3 guys, and they make some noise in training camp, but you're never quite sure if it's actually going to translate, on the actual field in the regular season. But for JCM, not only is he getting that hype, but like they actually made a move to pretty much like open up the RB1 spot for him where they traded Brian Robinson Jr. They didn't need to do that. They rested him in their final preseason game, in a game where Chris Rodriguez played. That would kind of imply that Crosky-Merritt is going to be the starter. And so I'm fine buying in here at this price. I do think the upside's a little bit capped just on that like kind of early down roll. You might have Chris Rodriguez near the goal line. You have Jaden Daniels vulturing. They might use Deebo Samuel creatively, but young player, these are the types of darts I want to throw, like once we're getting into the triple-digit picks. So if Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt is available there, then I think he's definitely interesting. Now looking at tier 8, these are definitely more of like the RB2s, but in somewhat ambiguous backfields. We're going to start off with Cam Scatabo. Cam Scatabo seemed to be making some momentum in that backfield, ended up missing some time with an injury, but I just think he has a really fun skill set where he's this big physical runner, could be that short yardage goal line guy, but he's also a very capable pass catcher, which does give him a lot of upside for fantasy. I would not be shocked if in the second half of the season, he starts to pull away in this backfield. Then I have Bashal Tutin, talked about him in my sleeper video yesterday, just buying into a dynamic, young, fun player in a fairly wide open backfield. I know they have ETN, I know they have Bigsby. One of those guys could get traded. Tutin could just straight up, earn the starting spot. So want pieces of this Jaguars offense, and I think Tutin's fun. Then I have Jordan Mason, could push for a committee with Aaron Jones, also just like a top tier handcuff. Then I have Ramondre Stevenson. He's been slipping a little bit in my rankings. I think it's just me kind of buying more into Henderson and his production early on. I still think Ramondre is going to have decent usage, but after the first few weeks, I don't know how playable he's going to be as long as Henderson is healthy. Then I have Dylan Sampson. I think Sampson's a really interesting pick where he obviously was getting a lot of steam when Judkins had his legal situation. No charges were formally filed against Judkins, so then people kind of backed off of Dylan Sampson. But Judkins is still not signed to the roster. Like, he is not officially a Browns player right now. And so Dylan Sampson could definitely end up being the week one starter. He started the preseason game with the ones. Jerome Ford came in after him. At this range, like in the late 30s at the running back position, if you can get a week one starter, that's definitely a pick you should be making. Then I have Austin Eckler. I think he also benefits from the B-Rob trade, where we're not quite sure what JCM actually is going to be like in the regular season. Austin Eckler was super productive as a pass catcher last year. He was efficient on the ground. He is certainly not washed, and he really thrived last year in kind of a smaller role. So I think Eckler's definitely interesting, someone who could be like a potential flex option throughout the season. Then I have Tank Bigsby. Should be like the early down back for the Jaguars to start off the season. Also, like I talked about with ETN, has the potential upside to maybe get traded. Could actually end up in a better situation where he's like more established as the number one option. Then I have Quinshon Judkins. It's tough to rank him. He's just in this weird spot where it's like you don't know when he's going to play. You don't know if he's going to get suspended. But this is still a guy that the Broncos spent early round 2 pick on. Him not having charges filed against him is certainly a positive. And so you're just looking at the other running backs in the range, and this is like about where I'd feel comfortable drafting Quinshon Judkins. If he's just off your board, I get it. This is just where I'd start considering it. Then I have Jaden Blue dealing with an ankle sprain. I'll just actually talk about these Cowboys running backs back to back. Jaden Blue, Javonte Williams. I think Javonte is probably going to get overdrafted. And I get the argument, right? Like he's the guy that's probably going to step into the RB1 usage. I think the issue is just like Javonte Williams has not been a good football player over the last couple of years. So I'm kind of more willing to buy into like just the randomness of a rookie in Jaden Blue. Now him being banged up is not great, but if Javonte is truly like struggling and just not playing well, I don't think they're just going to force feed him the ball. Even Rico Dowdle, who was like pretty productive down the stretch last year, he still wasn't even able to pull away early on in the season from Zeke. So those guys are going to wrap up tier 8. Now looking at my 9th and final tier, this is definitely getting into like handcuff territory or just like super, super ambiguous running backs. I will make a point to show Joe Mixon here, running back 44, leading this tier. So he has been confirmed to be out now for at least the first 4 weeks. It's possible he doesn't play at all this season. It's also possible, I guess, he gets healthy. So we're just in this weird spot where when you have guys like Quinshon Judkins, Jaden Blue, Javonte Williams, guys who you could somewhat reasonably see actually being the running back ones for their teams, I have a tough time taking Joe Mixon over those guys. But once you're starting to get into like the handcuff territory, that's, I guess, where I'm fine pulling the trigger on Joe Mixon. Like, I think that's where the risk, is kind of worth it. So we go Joe Mixon to start off this tier. Then we're really getting into the handcuff territory. Braylon Allen, Ollie Gordon, Trey Benson, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Tajay Spears, Rashad White, Will Shipley. Najee Harris could have been more interesting, but him missing a lot of time, I feel like has just opened things up for Amarion Hampton. Then a few players that I will kind of hone in on here. Woody Marks, Dameon Pierce, Nick Chubb, this Texans running back room. I think all of these guys have a chance to be the RB1, right? Especially with Mixon now out. I think early on, first couple of weeks, it's going to be Dameon Pierce, Nick Chubb kind of competing for those RB1 snaps. I probably prefer Dameon Pierce in that battle, just with Nick Chubb, obviously kind of being a little bit washed at this point. Hasn't looked bad in the preseason, but I don't know. I'd rather just bet on the younger guy. I do think he could see a nice bounce back here in year 4. Nice rookie season. Last 2 seasons haven't been great. Wasn't even bad last year, just like was not involved. So I'm fine throwing darts on any of those Texans running backs. It's just like really a crapshoot on who's actually going to break out. And it's like, is one guy going to be established enough where they're actually going to be startable, or is it just going to be like a full-on committee behind a pretty rough offensive line? Then I have Brian Robinson Jr. purely in this handcuff tier, and I don't even think he's like a super safe handcuff, where I know Shanahan said, like, we brought him in here to be our number 2. If CMC goes down, I don't think it's a guarantee that B-Rob isn't getting beaten out by Isaac Guerrero. Like, B-Rob is nothing special. The Commanders were just willing to trade him away for a 6th-round pick. Guerrero filled in and was pretty solid last year, so I don't even think he's like a locked and loaded handcuff, but he would be my favorite like backup for the 49ers. Then I have Jerome Ford. He's also going to benefit from just like the ambiguity of this Quinshon Judkins situation. And then 2 more guys here. I do think Chris Rodriguez should be on rosters heading into week 1. I just feel like this Commanders running back room is just so up in the air where it's like, we went out week 1 and JCM and Chris Rodriguez are like splitting the early down snaps 50-50. that wouldn't be shocking. And so just kind of buying into that uncertainty. Obviously, Chris Rodriguez hasn't really proven anything in the NFL, but neither has JCM. So just throw a dart on him. I think it's fine. And then we're going to wrap it up here with DJ Giddens, just the pure Jonathan Taylor handcuff, but does seem to have that roll on lock. I guess I'll just give a few honorable mentions, guys who are just on the outside. Taj Brooks, Kyle Monungai, Keaton Mitchell. If you guys want my full top 200 rankings, you guys can get them in the description. They're free for you guys. You guys can just download the Google Sheet. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 60. I tried to keep this one short. I don't really think I succeeded, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you stayed till the end, you guys are real ones. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.